When you get a card with lots of layers or elements, what is the first thing you want to do? You want to touch it, you want to feel it, hug it, or no, maybe not that. So I was thinking, how about if I make something feelable, huggable on purpose? I'm going to use a really cool and fun craft supply. It's soft, it's squishy, it has dimension, and it comes in many pretty colors. But not only that, I found another cool element that will also add to the softness. So let's get to it. First I'm going to start with a real simple one. I have a yellow piece of foam that's slightly smaller than my card, and I have a bunch of circle dies. And I'm going to spread those circle dies over the foam. And I'm trying to make a fun pattern. Some of the dies I let hang over the edge, and some of them I add just in the middle, filling up that space with my dies. I add a few smaller ones as well. And then I'm going to run it through the die cutting machine, and it cuts like butter. So I'm going to take off all the dies and I take out all the circles. And this will give me a really cool piece of cheese, all lactose and allergy free and with some amazing instant dimension. I'm going to add some glue to the back, and I'm using this Nuvo glue that will work great to add the foam to the paper. And then I'm going to just glue it to my card. I already cut the foam to size, so it's slightly smaller than my card, so I can add it straight on top. And this already makes a really fun card base. So next I've cut another piece of the yellow foam with some holes in it, and I have an orange brownish piece of cardstock in the same size as my foam. I'm going to trace all the circles on the cardstock with a pencil. Then I'm going to line up all the dies again. And I run that through the die cutting machine. And then I'm going to add the cardstock piece to the back of the foam slightly offset, so a piece of it is visible, which gives you a really cool kind of shade, making the cheese look even more like cheese. Then I cut off the excess that is sticking out, and I'm adding it to my card. After I added my piece of foam, I noticed that I didn't burnish my card really well, and to fix that I let it hang over the edge of my desk. Another straight edge will work as well, and this way I could burnish the side of my card with the foam layer already on top. And for these cards I made the cheesy elements, and while I was at it I filled a complete sheet, and you can find it in the treasure trunk. I have a link in the description box below this video. Next I have a 3-layer butterfly that I cut out of glitter foam, and glitter foam cuts very easy as well, and you can take out all the pieces on top or you can turn it around, which goes even easier, and then pick out all the pieces from the back. And with glitter foam it's even easier to see the cut out bits and pieces. So I have my 3 butterflies cut out of glitter foam, and I also cut them out of 2 lighter colors cardstock. To glue my cardstock layers I'm going to use Nuvo glue, and the other PVA glue that dries clear will work as well. To add the foam to the cardstock I can use the same glue. For adding the non-porous surface to a porous surface, that will work fine as well. So I'm adding my glue, then I'm lining up my foam butterfly by squeezing on the sides of the foam and the cardstock, and this way you can line it up pretty easy. For the middle butterfly I did the same. I've added my butterfly with a Nuvo glue. Now I'm going to add my cardstock layer on top of the foam, and for this I'm going to use glossy accents. You can also use Nuvo crystal glaze, that will work as well. I'm adding a bit of the glue to the back of the cardstock butterfly, and then I'm going to add it on top of the previous layers. I'm going to squeeze it from the sides again so it's lined up nicely, and then I will put it aside to dry. And glossy accents or Nuvo crystal glaze will work better to add your cardstock layers to the foam, because foam is a non-porous surface, and both glossy accents or Nuvo crystal glaze will stick better to the non-porous surface, and even more so with the glitter foam. So I put my butterflies aside to dry. I will pick them up in a bit, and I'm going to work on another card. I'm using PVA foam, which you can often find in the kids craft supply section, and it comes in many colors. Now for the sentiments I like to use the 3mm foam, which is a bit more dense and resilient and forgiving with fingernail prints, and it also cuts really well with your dies. So for my card base I've used a piece of graphic 45 paper from the Wild and Free collection, and I've picked sort of a leopard skin pattern to add to my card base, and I also cut some hexagons out of regular foam and out of glitter foam, both in black. So I'm going to add a bunch of those hexagons to my card, and I'm making a fun pattern again. And I'm adding it a bit to one side of the card. So I'm making most of the pattern on about 1/3 of the side of the card, slightly offset from the middle. Once I've had my pattern down, I've glued everything in place. To finish the card, I've got a sentiment out of black and a lighter piece of cardstock that I cut in half and added to the back of the sentiment so it pops out from under. And now I'm going to add it on my hexagons, and to make sure that I can add my sentiment on the same level, I'm adding 2 smaller hexagons as well, measuring with my sentiment. And then I add my sentiment in place. I cut off the excess bits that are sticking out, and I think this makes a really fun huggable card with some interesting dimension and some mess-free sparkle. And next, from the same paper collection, I've added some patterned paper to my card base again. And I picked some colors that go well with the butterflies, and to make them stand out a bit more, I'm adding a piece of torn vellum in the middle. So I'm going to measure with the vellum where I have to put my butterflies. And because vellum is less porous than regular paper, I'm using Nouveau Crystal Glaze in this case. So I keep the vellum in place where I want to add it on the card, and I add the butterflies on top of the vellum. And once both butterflies are in place, I'm going to add some glue to the back of the vellum again, and then I add the complete piece to my card. And this makes another fun dimensional card. And for the other butterfly, there's the cardstock on top, so that's not very huggable, because for this butterfly the foam is the last layer. So this time I'm using some cork, which is extremely huggable as well. It's super soft, it's very easy to cut, and I'm using my butterfly at the top. I cut off the excess bit and I add the rest of the butterfly at the bottom. And this adds a really soft and huggable element to the card as well. And here are my 2 finished cards. And what would a huggable foam card video be without any strips or stripes? So I'm going to add some strips of foam to a piece of printing paper. I've already added some tape to the back of the foam, which is a really fast way to add your foam to a paper base, like this printing paper. So I'm going to add some wider and smaller strips alternate to the printing paper, and it's kind of hard to get them really straight because foam is pretty flexible. So I'm just making it as pretty as I can, pressing the next piece to the previous one. And then I'm going to skip one. I'm going to add that to my card so I have the right size, but I'm not going to stick it to the paper. And then I'm going to go on with the rest of the strips. So I'm just taking out that one that I had in lying loose, and then I'm going to cut some panels for my cards out of this background. So I make my panels slightly smaller than my card base is, and this will give me 2 regular card bases and one that's slightly smaller. So for the first card I cut the word happy out of the piece of foam that I didn't attach to the background. So I'm taking out all the letters, and then I want to add that strip back in the opening. But now the printer paper is showing, so I cut those pieces apart. And I'm going to add those 2 foam parts to my card. And because I had that printer paper to measure the size of the panel, it will fit on my card base perfectly. So I can add all the pieces in place. The bigger ones with tape and the strip with the word with some glue. And then I'm going to add those smaller bits that came out of the letters back in place. And you don't have to do that, I just like that better. So that's my one card, and then I have those leftover letters, of course. So on my other card I already added those panels, and I'm going to add the letters in place. And because there was already tape to the back of the strip, I have some tape to the back of my letters, which makes it really easy to add them in place. And this is a really fast way to make 2 out of 1 fun and huggable cards. And to add a bit more interest to the first card, I added some gemstones for some extra sparkle. And for that leftover piece that was a bit too small for the complete card, I cut off a bit and added the panels with LOL in between, and the other bits I can use on another card. So this way, from the big foam panel I made, I can turn that into 4 cards. I've added some Nouveau drops in the same color as one of the colors of the foam, and this makes some really cool and fun cards as well. And next I have some squares. Squares are always fun to use on a card, so I'm going to make a pattern with my foam squares. And I'm dividing the colors a bit over the card background, using some glitter in every row, of course. And once I have a pattern that I like, I'm going to glue the pieces in place. So I'm just starting in the corners on one side and then divide the middle one in between. Then I do the same at the other side of the card and I'm going to divide the rest of the squares in between. And I'm just eyeballing it, but you can use a ruler or make some marks on your card so you know where your squares need to be and you can space them out really evenly and precisely. Using the glue this way will give you some wiggle room to slide the pieces over the card to get them on really straight. And this makes another fun, colorful, huggable card. Just keep it simple, finish with a sentiment in cardstock or even better in foam to make it even more huggable. For the next card I cut a sentiment out of foam and this is one of the backgrounds I made in a previous video using some alcohol ink. And I will link to that in the description box below this video. And because both the sentiment and the background are non-porous surfaces, I'm using Nouveau Crystal Glaze to add the sentiment to my card base. And these make really fun cards with some cool texture and some huggable dimension. And then for the last card I'm going to combine it all. I have my background out of cork and I've cut a flower out of white foam. Now this is pretty boring, so I'm going to use stencil butter to color this foam. And I have a piece of kitchen paper and a cloth or anything else will do. I just need a tiny bit of the color and I'm spreading that a bit over my kitchen paper. Then I'm going to start in the middle making a circle motion and then wiping it to the outside of the flower. And only the tiny bit that I added on the kitchen paper is enough to get a lot of color on my flower. And of course I want the middle part a little bit darker, blending it out a bit to the outside. And this will give you a really pretty shiny bit of color with the white of the flower still showing, which will add to the dimension as well. Next I'm adding a piece of tape on my cork and I'm adding some thread. I'm just spreading that over my card, pressing it down in the middle so the thread will stay in place. And a piece of thread is a fairly cheap and simple way to add some texture to a background, as well as adding some interest and create a bit of depth and playfulness on the card. And once I have that down, I'm going to add my branches. And for the smaller branches I'm using the Nouveau Crystal Glaze again. But later on you will see I will get my heat tool and that works really well with the foam and the cork also. And I think I even like that better than the crystal glaze because it sticks right away. And with the crystal glaze you have some drying time. So I'm spreading and dividing all the greenery on the card. And I'm measuring with my flower every now and then. And this way I can see what it will look like and how much is visible, what comes popping out from under my flower or the parts that are blocked by the flower. And every now and then you see me stop, and this is just like taking a step back and looking at the complete picture. You can also walk away and grab something to drink to take a bit of a pause to see what it looks like. And when you come back, it's like you're looking with fresh eyes. It can give you that confirmation that you're going in the right direction, or it can give you a new idea for an even better end result. And once all my greenery pieces are in place, and I've used quite a bit to fill up that background, I'm going to add my flower. And for that I'm using the heat tool, and I'm also adding another branch to the side to get a bit more of that glitter on the side as well. So as you can see, I already tried the coloring on the back of the flower. I just add a bit of glue on the back and then I just press it down in place in the middle of the card. I always love layering like this. It's so cool to do and you always get a really pretty result. I hope you're going to have a blast making some soft and huggable cards on purpose. Now here's another video with some inspiration for you. And as always, make sure to keep on crafting.